Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe and share. Help build my channel and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. Picture this: a man dies, comes back to life through divine intervention, then disappears from biblical history only to resurface as a revolutionary church leader on a mysterious island across the Mediterranean. This isn't fiction, this is the incredible, largely untold story of Lazarus of Bethany, the man Jesus raised from the dead, and his extraordinary journey to ancient Britain. Most people know Lazarus from that pivotal moment in the Gospel of John when Jesus called him forth from the tomb after 4 days. But what happened next? Where did the man who experienced death and resurrection firsthand go? The answer is more fascinating than any Hollywood screenplay, involving secret voyages, underground Christian networks, and a literary legacy that would prove his presence in one of the most unlikely places on earth. To understand Lazarus's incredible story, we need to step back into what historians call the Golden Age of Christianity, the first 600 years following Christ's crucifixion. This wasn't the peaceful, organized Christianity many imagine today. This was Christianity forged in fire, tested by sword, and proven through blood. During these centuries, the British Isles became an unlikely epicenter of Christian activity, despite being what the ancient records describe as saturated in drama, romance, tragedy and sacrifice. Picture a landscape where perilous wars raged constantly, where violent persecutions swept across the sea-surrounded isle like tsunamis of hatred. Yet in the midst of this chaos, something extraordinary was happening. The Christian believers in Britain demonstrated what ancient historians called invincible courage and unbendable determination. These early Christians walked openly into enemy territory, declaring their message with resonant voices to friend and foe alike, often paying the ultimate price but never backing down. Imagine the scene: surrounded by hostile forces and evil enemies, these believers fearlessly proclaimed their faith in broad daylight. They weren't playing it safe. They weren't trying to blend in. They were revolutionaries of the spirit, and their boldness was about to change the world. At the heart of this spiritual revolution was a place called Avalon, not the mythical Avalon of Arthurian legend, but a real training center that functioned like an ancient Christian university. What was happening there defies modern imagination. An endless stream of men and women from across Europe poured into Avalon seeking conversion, baptism, and training. These weren't casual seekers, these were people willing to risk everything for their faith. After receiving instruction, they would depart for hostile territories, often replacing fellow Christians who had been martyred for their beliefs. The scale of this operation was staggering. From Gaul alone, a Christian leader named Philip sent exactly 160 disciples to assist the mission. But that was just the beginning. Converts arrived from multiple other sources, creating an international network of Christian training and deployment that would make modern missionary organizations jealous. Even more remarkable, this wasn't the only Christian mission operating in Britain. St. Paul himself had established a second church in Wales, creating a dual-pronged approach to evangelizing the British Isles. Meanwhile, original apostles of Jesus frequently visited these communities, staying temporarily to encourage the faithful before continuing to other lands, keeping what the records describe as their fiery zeal burning bright. Leading this entire British operation was Joseph of Arimathea, the wealthy biblical figure who had provided his own tomb for Jesus' burial. But Joseph hadn't come alone. He arrived with what historians call the Bethany Band, a group of Jesus' closest associates who had made a perilous journey across the Mediterranean in what ancient sources described as an oarless boat. This wasn't a pleasure cruise. This was a desperate exodus from Judea in 36 AD, likely fleeing persecution that was intensifying in the Holy Land. Among this remarkable group was Lazarus, the same man who had experienced death and resurrection firsthand under Jesus' ministry. Joseph proved to be a brilliant organizational leader, strategically deploying his companions across Europe to maximize their impact. He sent his most illustrious companions back to different parts of Gaul to assist Philip in founding churches, while bringing in qualified replacements to maintain the British mission. It was a sophisticated operation that demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking. But here's where Lazarus's story becomes truly fascinating. Before arriving in Britain, he had already served as Bishop of Cyprus, establishing his credentials as an experienced church leader. His journey to Britain wasn't his first missionary assignment, it was part of a calculated strategy by someone who understood both spiritual authority and practical organization. During his time in Britain, though relatively short, Lazarus accomplished something that would prove his presence there for all time. He wrote a comprehensive guide called The Triads of Lazarus, Rules for Living the Christian Life that was specifically adapted to Celtic culture and language. Here's what makes this absolutely extraordinary. These writings are preserved nowhere else in the world except in ancient Celtic records. This wasn't someone writing generic Christian instruction, this was deep cultural integration that could only come from someone who had lived among the Celtic people and understood their ways of thinking. These triads represent what historians call Lazarus's timeless imprint on Britain, concrete literary evidence that the man Jesus raised from the dead had not only visited the British Isles but had understood the local culture so deeply that he could write spiritual guidance in their own conceptual framework. But Lazarus's British chapter was only the beginning. Joseph eventually selected him as the first of his companions to return to Gaul, specifically to Marseilles, the same port where they had first arrived in the drifting boat years earlier. This wasn't random, this was strategic deployment of his most experienced leader. Lazarus didn't travel alone. He took with him Mary Magdalene and Martha, his own sisters, creating a family ministry team that would reshape Christianity in southern France. Upon arrival in Marseilles, he was appointed as the city's first bishop, a position he would hold for exactly 7 years. Multiple historical sources confirm these details with remarkable consistency. Roger of Hoveden, writing centuries later, recorded that Marseilles was an episcopal city under the domination of the King of Aragon, and that it contained the relics of Saint Lazarus, the brother of Saint Mary Magdalene and Martha, who held the bishopric for 7 years. Independent church records at Lyons confirm the identical facts. Lazarus returned to Gaul from Britain to Marseilles, taking with him Mary Magdalene and Martha. He was the first appointed bishop. He died there 7 years later. During his 7 years in Marseilles, Lazarus demonstrated the same organizational brilliance he had shown in Britain. He constructed the first church on the site where the present cathedral still stands, meaning that nearly 2,000 years later, Christians still worship on the foundation he laid. But he didn't stop there. In just a few years, he founded multiple churches throughout the region, displaying an efficiency that speaks to both spiritual authority and practical expertise. His preaching was described as zealous, but his personal disposition was noted for its kindness, a combination that left what historians call a deep impress in Gaul. Here's perhaps the most remarkable testament to his impact. Despite Philip's much longer residence in Gaul, Lazarus is better remembered in France than Philip himself. In many quarters, he's still regarded as the Apostle of Gaul, and his relics are treasured to this day across multiple French cities including Marseilles, Lyons, Aix, Saint-Maximin, and La Sainte-Baume. Lazarus's story concludes with a detail that sets him apart from many early Christian leaders. He died a natural death. After experiencing resurrection from Jesus, surviving the perilous journey to Britain, adapting to Celtic culture, founding churches across Gaul, and establishing a lasting episcopal legacy, he passed away peacefully in Marseilles around 44 or 45 AD. He was the first of Joseph's original Bethany Band to die, setting a precedent for how this founding generation would be remembered. Unlike many of his contemporaries who were martyred for their faith, Lazarus completed his earthly mission and died in peace, surrounded by the Christian communities he had helped establish. The story of Lazarus in Britain challenges everything we think we know about early Christianity and its spread across Europe. This wasn't just a Mediterranean religion slowly expanding northward, this was a sophisticated, internationally coordinated movement led by people who had personally known Jesus Christ. The preservation of the Triads of Lazarus in Celtic records provides concrete evidence that Christianity reached Britain much earlier than many historians previously believed, and that it was established not by unknown missionaries but by someone from Jesus's inner circle who took the time to understand and adapt to local culture. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.